Deacon Carl, when people say good things about you, you ought to be grateful because they don't have to say good things about you. And when he was saying all those things about me and I thought about myself, I wondered just who was he talking about. But nevertheless, I'm grateful, and I was sitting there a while ago and somebody said, are you nervous? I said, well, Lord, I said, I'm doing all right now. But I'm going to get up in a few minutes. And I'm going to need you. So I need the Lord for this. And at first I'd like to acknowledge God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Those three characteristics, but they are one Godhead. And they are co-equal in power, glory, and honor. And we acknowledge the moderator in his absence, and past moderator Rogers, who's always been a friend of mine. And I'm always proud to introduce and acknowledge my pastor. We've been co-laboring together for 20-some-odd years, and I don't know about him, but I haven't gotten tired yet. And I can't recognize my wife. Over 50 years we've been married, and I know people like Deacon Humphrey wonder how did she stay with me 30, 50 years. And then everybody know the apple of my eye, my daughter, she's sitting there, and one of my grandsons who I'm proud of, they're here, I guess just to hear what I'm going to say. But I thought about a written address and a well-planned address, and the Lord put on my mind, said, just try to give them a pep talk. I remember when I was playing football, and we have pep rallies. Before the ball game, you come into the auditorium, and then they give you a pep rally, kind of get you in the groove. And so then I said, well, Lord, what do we need to talk about, thinking about this convention and where we're trying to go. And first of all, he put on my mind, say, one principle, talk about this principle, three principles. First one is, I can almost see the promised land. Now, I don't know what that means, but he said, I can almost see the promised land. And the second one was, where do we go from here? And the third one, now I'm going to walk around because I got on a mic and I don't have a written address, so I might be able to keep some of this nervousness down by walking around. And the third one was, do you have the strength to love? All right. Now, I can almost see the promised land. If I was standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a panoramic view of human history up until now, and the good Lord would come to me and say, Deacon Franklin, at what age or what period would you like to live in? First, I would take a mental flight all the way to Egypt. I go down by the Red Sea, and I go through the wilderness, and I go on to the promised land. And as magnificent as that is, I wouldn't stop there. I'll focus my attention on Greece and Mount Olympus. And I'll watch Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and Euripides and Aristophanes as they gather around the Parthenon, discussing the issue of eternal reality. But I wouldn't stop there. I look at Rome in its heydays, and I watch the development of the Roman Empire under different emperors and different rulers. But I wouldn't stop there. I go on to the Renaissance period, and I watch the development and the effect that the Renaissance period had on human ethics and human character. But I wouldn't stop there. I go on to Wittenberg, and I watch the man for whom Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was named after, Martin Luther, as he tacked his 95 theses on the door of the church at Wittenberg. But I wouldn't stop there. I go all the way up until the 1863. And I watched a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. But I wouldn't stop there. I go all the way up to the 30s, and I watch a leader who was grappling with the bankruptcy of his nation form that wonderful and dynamic phrase that there's nothing to fear but fear itself. But I wouldn't stop there. I turned to the good Lord and I said, Lord, if you would allow me to live just a few years in the first part of the 21st century, I'd be grateful. Now, I understand that's a strange thing to say when we know that our world is in a majestic situation and confusion is all around the world. In fact, it's midnight in our world today. But you know, I learned that you can only see the stars when it's dark enough. And I can see God working in this 21st century in such a way that men all over the world are responding for some strange reason. All the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, to Kenya, to Los Angeles, California, to New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, and Huntsville, Alabama. The cry is the same. We want to be free. But you know, freedom is elusive to the world because the world has not accepted the authority of the Prince of Peace. And because the world as a whole has rejected its rightful Lord, crisis will continue to follow crisis. But you know, but even in the midst of terrorism all around and bomb bursting all in the air and bullets flying everywhere and the profiling and the killing of our young people and our clergymen and the burning of our home and our churches, there's still hope for a greater tomorrow. What evil men are destroying and tearing down, godly men like Indian Creek Association and Sunday School Convention men can rebuild. So that's where we are today. But the question is, where do we go from here? You know, we have come a long ways in 93 years since the inception of this Sunday School Convention, but we still have a long ways to go. But I don't believe anything can stop us now. I believe we're on the move. And I believe we're going to continue until we triumph. I don't believe church is not supporting the association and not going along with the vision of the ex-moderator and our moderator now and adhering to the principle of the Bible expositor and the deans. I don't believe that can destroy us. I believe we're on the move. And I just believe Indian Creek, we're going to continue until we triumph. And I know a lot of you are asking, well, Deacon Franklin said, how long is it going to take? You know, we've been traveling the road for 90-some odd years, and we haven't gotten anything, we haven't done anything. Said, it's kind of like the civil rights movement. All we ever heard was wait. And you said, that word wait just rings in my ears with piercing familiarity. It always meant never. But God sent me by here this morning to let you know and to tell you it won't be long. Oh no. He said it won't be long because no lie can live forever. He said it won't be long because man still reap just what he sowed. He said it won't be long because the moral arm of the universe is long, but it's still bend toward justice. He said it won't be long because truth that is crushed to the earth will always rise again. It won't be long because truth is forever on the scaffold, wrong is forever on the throne. Yet the scaffold sways the future. And behind the dim unknown stand our God in the shadow, keeping watch over his own. It won't be long. But in the meantime, do you have the strength to love? You know, Indian Creek, let me tell you something. Love is of God. Keep loving one another. He that loveth is born of God, and he knows God. But he that loveth not knows not God, because God is love. And God's love is made perfect in us. And when we talk about love, just what is love? Love is a word that has many facets of meaning to it. Some define love as affection based on admiration, and others define love as having a warm attachment between each other. But the Apostle Peter, he said love is above all things. He said above all things, have fervent love among yourselves. Then the Apostle Paul, he goes just a little further. He said, oh, love is the fulfilling of the law. He said in the old days, men were trying to work their way to heaven by trying to keep the 10 commandments and 100 other commandments they had manufactured from them. But he said, then along came a man named Jesus. And Jesus said, if you can do one thing, you can very easily do 110 things without ever being conscious. Said, if you can love, you can fulfill the whole law. Then the Apostle John, who we call the Apostle of Love, he goes a little further. When he defines love, he just simply said, God is love. It's in the Gospel of John 3:16 that you find the golden text of the entire Bible. Some people call it the miniature Bible. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, based on them implications of love, we find that there's something drastically wrong with the world that you and I live in. There's a need in government, there's a need in education, there's a need in business, and there's a need in religion. But the greatest need is in the hearts of the individual. You see, when men live and God created them to live, everything runs smoothly. But when man is not living as God created him to live, he has trouble in every phase of society. God created us to live forever and to forever enjoy him. But because of our own stubbornness, to go our own independent way, this relationship with God was broken. And man could not get back within the boundaries of God's love. So God had to send his only begotten Son. And Jesus said, I come that thou might have life, and have it more abundantly, that it might be full and meaningful. Now, we have great men that try to solve the problem. In government, men have changed the Constitution, changed articles in the Constitution. Men in government and business, they have changed rules in order to meet the demands of the minority, only to encounter greater demand. Great men in religion, they streamline religion, said, trying to gain the interest of the young people. They said in order to save the church. But evidently they forgot what Jesus said to Peter on the plains of Caesarea. He said, on this rock I build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The church is secure. But there was another group that rose up a few years ago, and they said, we have the answer. They consist of hippies, yippies, peace group, and others. They said what the world needs most is love, sweet love. I agree. But I oppose their definition of love. They define love as being a love-in where you have drinking and smoking and dancing and making love occur. I disagree with this. Sure, they have great men, they have great leaders, they have presidents, and they have some preachers in this group too. But the Apostle Paul said, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I become as sounding brass, or a tinkling cymbal. He said, though I have the gift of prophecy, and understanding all mystery and all knowledge, though I have all faith that I can move mountains, he said, without love, it profit me nothing. He said, love suffer long, love is kind, love envies not, love vaunteth not itself, it's not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoice in the truth. Thinketh all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. He said, love will never fail. But if there be prophecy, he said, they shall fail. Where there is tongues, they shall cease. And where there is understanding, it shall vanish away. Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child. I understood as a child. I spoke as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. He said, now we see through glass darkly, but then face to face. But now we know in part. And then shall we know even as also we are known. So Paul suggests that you abide, hope, faith, and charity. These three. But the greatest of these is charity. The strength of love. The strength of love. Paul was talking to a young man one day. The young man said, Paul, can you tell me of anything that will last forever? Paul said, I know very little about life to come. But one thing I'm certain, love must last because God is love. And Jesus was talking to his apostle one day. They were talking about great things. Jesus said, holy boys, said, don't seek great things in life. Things cannot be great. He said, the only greatness lies in unselfish love. And he said, don't be afraid to be among problems, among difficulties, among people. This is the stream of life. And he said, out of the stream of life is where man's character grows. And man learn to love. He says it's easy to love them that love you. But what reward have ye? But if you can love your enemies, and if you can pray for those who despitefully use you and speak manner evil against you falsely, then great is your reward.
That's right. That's right.
And as we come to the conclusion of this address, or this pep talk, you know, I'm talking about the man of love. The man, the greatest power on earth is the power to love. And the only way you can have this power, you have to know the man that I'm going to tell you about. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what I know about him. And I like to end these addresses with this because this is what I know about the man that can help you. Some people call him Jehovah. Some people call him Yahweh. Some people call him Elohim. But I just call him God. Because he's the first, he's the last, he's the beginning, he's the end, he's the creator of all things and the keeper of all creation. He's the architect of this great universe. He always was, always is, and always will be unmoved, unchanged, undefeated, but never undone. He was wounded, and he brought forth healing. He was bruised, and he brought ease to pain. He was persecuted, and he brought forth freedom. The world couldn't understand it. The schools couldn't explain it. The leaders couldn't deny it. The young people couldn't change it. Herod couldn't kill him. Pharisees couldn't confuse him. Oprah Winfrey, she can't explain him away. And you know what? I serve him because his ways are right. His word is eternal. His mind is on me. And his goal for me is the abundant life. And I follow him because he is wisdom for the wise, a leader for the leaders, the ancient of days, the overseer of those who overcome and is to come. And do you think that's impressive? If you think that is impressive, listen to this. He was born in a pagan village. He was born to a pagan lady. He never went no more than 200 miles where he was raised up at. He never wrote a book. He never had a home. He never had a family. He never had none of those things that the world associates greatness with. He worked as a carpenter until he was 30 years old. And then he just got up and started doing good things. And when he was 33 years old, the tide of opinion turned against him. They turned him over to his enemy. And you know the irony of the whole thing, his own friend turned him over. One friend betrayed him, his best friend denied him, and all his other friends forsook him. They carried him through a mockery trial. They found him guilty, took him out and hung him on a cross. And while he was hanging there on the cross, dying, they gambled for the only possession he had in the world, his clothes. And after he died, I didn't say after they killed him, after he died, they took him off, put him in a borrowed tomb. But look here, that's not where my address ends. 20 centuries later, He still remains the most influential character in human history. Oh yeah, out of all the army that ever marched, all the navy that ever sailed, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, together has not the influence on one human character than this one character, one isolated character. Tomorrow, all over the world, in the pulpit, men, women, boys, and girls, they'll be talking about this one solitary character. Some will be calling him King of Kings, Rose of Sharon, Lily of the Valley, the bright and morning star. But the question is, what will you call him?
That's right. That's right.
I tell you what I'm going to do, and I hope all of you will stand with me. I'm going to call him Jesus. I'm going to stand and say, Jesus reigns. Let heaven and earth rejoice. How many would you stand with me and say, Jesus reigns? Let heaven and earth rejoice. I made my choice, and you just made yours. God bless you. God bless you.